Welcome to Dove and Dragon Radio. I'm your host, M.L.Ruscsak. I'm here with Janet Kira Lessin. Welcome.
Aloha. Thanks for having me on.
Now, we were talking a little bit before the show started. You do a little bit of everything, but I also see you have a doctor in front of your name.
I am not a doctor, although people think I'm a doctor, but my husband's the doctor.
Okay.
And, with being in lockdown here with COVID, I thought it'd be great to get my PhD, but I don't know if I'll be able to accomplish that. So I'm just Janet.
You're just Janet, okay. Now, you're an author. You're a little bit of a jack of all trades, so we're going to try to break this down into sections. Let's go with your co-author of Dance of the Souls.
Mm-hmm.
And what is that about?
Dance of the Souls is about my many incarnations. I remember many of my past lives. I've met many people that I've been in other relationships with in previous lives. And so, and anyway, this is the Dance of the Souls of all the beings that I know personally that I have interacted with, and they keep coming in and out of my life, and we switch roles. Sometimes we're parent-child, or we're lovers, or, whatever. And so that's the first book of a series, and I went into my past life as Nima, and so Nima was one of my incarnations that I recovered. Some of it's like spontaneous recall, and then I will go into a hypnotherapist like my husband. I had a different hypnotherapist, and so I'll have like a spontaneous recall, or maybe a dream, and I'll remember, I was so-and-so, and then we flesh it out and figure out,
right.
And it comes from your subconscious, superconscious. So apparently, now it really makes me kind of cringe. It's like saying you're Jesus, right? But apparently, and there's a criticism in our society, what do you think you are, a famous person? Well, this is a famous person. So I like to say I'm a fractal of the goddess Nima, which is an archetype of the creator goddess, the one that was part of our genetic makeup. Like, so we have her DNA, and it's a part of the Sumerian Anunnaki story. So I have some memories, and when I write up the story, more memories come through. So it's almost like I go into automatic writing, and
right.
I have what I remember consciously, and then I get. So once I opened the portal and I started this dialogue with this higher self emanation of me, Janet, and Janet's like the avatar in this current incarnation, right? So I'm alive now as Janet Kira Lessin, but I have other incarnations, and we have also what I've discovered through this process, through dreams, hypnosis, and spontaneous recall, is that we simultaneously exist on many levels and many vibratory frequencies on many planets and many incarnations, because time is an illusion, right? Everything's simultaneous, so that's why you can affect the past and the now and the future. So that's what Dance of the Soul is about. It's like I'm recovering the essences of who I am and piecing together all these dreams. It's a massive undertaking. So that's only book one of a 3-part series, which may go 4 or 5. So, but I kind of, go ahead, you could ask the question.
Is all 3 books out right now, or just the one?
Just the first one, because I'm in, root chakra survival mode like most humans, and I have to stop and work, right? But I have it. I have the outline, and so one of my wishes for myself during this COVID lockdown is that I can get back to writing my book to finish that. So it's in the workings. I have it. What if you're going to write a book, you can kind of outline where you're going to go with the chapters. So I wrote down all the chapters, which is at least 3 books. But I can kind of, if you want to ask me more questions, or you just want me to go back.
Okay. Well,
I'm
actually on your website. So
okay.
Before we got to book 1 of writing, what possessed you to start writing? Let's go there.
Well, I've always been writing. Back when I was a young teenager, I started doing, it was like a writing with three people. So we were doing a Star Trek story. So we're talking about probably the early 70s. I'm 66, so Star Trek came out. And I was part of the Star Trek movement to get Star Trek back on the air. And it wasn't even a movie yet, right? So we're going back in time.
Mm-hmm.
And so my two girlfriends and I would write a chapter, and then we'd pass, and this was all longhand, right? We would pass it to each other and then write the next chapter. So I got addicted to writing back then, and I've been writing most of my life. But I formally got my first book out, I think it was in 2008 or 9. I finally got my act together, right, and got it down on paper and published it, self-published it. But my first book was about my explorations into polyamory. So I started exploring alternative relationships because I kept having failed relationships. You know, in the first marriage, I got married at 16 to escape a dysfunctional family, and I reconciled with my parents before they died, but they were not the best people to raise a child, and I was the third of the youngest, right? So in my first marriage, that husband was abusive, and he cheated on me. In the second marriage, I ended up cheating, but it's still like it was abusive, verbally abusive. The first one was physically abusive. And I kept getting into abusive relationships where there was a lot of infidelity. And then I discovered after my parents died that they had been swingers, and they were supposed to be really religious Christian people. And so I had to reconcile all this in my mind, like what was really going on. You know, is monogamy what we really do, or is that just what we profess to do? And then we're really doing this lying, cheating, sneaking, you know. And I had to look at that from another perspective. So I went into therapy for years, for about 20 years, trying to figure out what's going on with me. Some things I do in life are conscious. Some things seem to be knee-jerk responses to, you know, external stimuli. So I might, my boyfriend might cheat on me, and for me to console myself, I'll go have an affair or something, you know. And I was doing this conscious and unconscious stuff, and I really had to go figure out what was going on with me, because I wasn't happy. I had a deep depression, and I kept acting out in strange and bizarre ways. So then I really learned about psychotherapy. I went into intensive therapy. And then I had all the alien abduction stuff going on as well. So even choosing a therapist, I had to go, okay, well, let's do the relationship part of myself that's dysfunctional. And then it wasn't until many years of doing therapy about I was abused as a child. My mother was very abused, going through all that stuff, that I finally got to the ET stuff, because, you have to find the right therapist, or they'll just call you crazy. They'll blame and shame you, and then you'll just feel like a puddle melted down and, no longer able to function. So that's what I ended up doing. So the first book I wrote was about, because I met my third husband when I was like in my sexual prime. I was in my 40s, right? And I had never had children. So on some level, my body wanted to reproduce, and my subconscious wanted to reproduce, because we're programmed from the beginning of life that we're supposed to be mothers, right? Especially a child of the 50s, right?
Right.
Yeah. So anyway, do you have any comments or feedback on that aspect before I continue?
You mentioned aliens in there somewhere. Where does that all fit in?
Well, when I came into this body as Janet, I was Janet Lynn Thompson when I was born. I had contact with extraterrestrials and ghosts from moment one. So, and I had some higher self-recollections when I was very young. So it's like I came in and I was able to think on this higher level, with like who we are as a soul that goes throughout time and existence. And then I was still in a baby. So I had this conflict. So at 18 months, the ETs came in and did some intervention, because I was talking to my mother at this advanced level, and I'm a child, right? And it was freaking her out. And, if I was in the same place, that probably would have freaked me out too. So they came and did an intervention which kind of babbled my communication, so I wasn't speaking at that level, because my mother probably would have killed me because she thought she had given birth to the demon seed. And I know this is common throughout existence. I've interviewed thousands of people, and you know, when you're a child and you're doing things like way beyond your level, then you know your parents are freaked out, and you know, part of them, they want to protect themselves, and they might do harm either intentionally or unintentionally. And my mother has been acting out.
Right. You look at things from a mother's point of view. You have a child that's acting out. They're higher intelligence than what you expect for their age group, and you don't know what's going on because now they're acting out. They're very intelligent. You see this as a parent, but at the same time, they're not acting like they should be. So what do? You go seek doctors, medicine, pills, whatever. And it dependent on what decade we're in is how the treatment is. Every 10 years, the treatment changes for these kids. We call it autism now.
Right. And depending on where they're born, so if you're born into a a Hasidic community or an Amish community or strict Catholic or Muslim community, and you're exhibiting telepathic abilities and you can levitate. I have clients that have levitated. Then you're going to get either killed or shut down and shamed. And I just had a client yesterday that totally shamed from all of his indigo abilities. He was magical, but his mother, father, and his sister just shamed him, and they wanted to, just keep him in a container, the human container, and this is what you should do, and this is your abilities. So a lot of these children come in and they remember past lives. Some of them are telepathic. They can there's all kinds of abilities they come in with, but they get shut down really fast. And I suspect that's happening all over the world.
Of course. We don't want to go against certain religious beliefs, depending on which religion you're in. So you don't want to exhibit anything that's out of the norm. Higher intelligence, able to speak multiple languages without ever learning them. You don't exhibit them because society says don't.
Right. And so since I'm a contact experiencer, the ETs came in, and I'm guessing because back then I wasn't oriented around a calendar, but it was probably between a year and 18 months of age. And to protect me, they had to dummy me down, shut me down, because they knew my mother was going to kill me. In fact, she tried several times to kill me. And so they wanted me to survive, because I think a lot of us are ambassadors now coming into human form to awaken consciousness, especially here and now. There's perfection in why I came in when I came in, probably for you and everybody else. And what we need to do individually and collectively is find out our mission, why we decide to come down to planet Earth, especially to be alive in this incredible time that we're in. It's just amazing what's going on. But I'm still trying to figure it out. But
yeah, right. What's going on right now is between the end of 2019 and all of 2020, it's like, what in the world is going on, really? You have massive fires, you have earthquakes, you have flooding, you have major storms. Then you go into the virus that's going on right now. Then you have the people are saying this year's hurricane season is going to be the worst in decades. So
there seems to be a cleansing. There seems to be a cleansing of the world, which, of course, is very deleterious to those that are getting cleansed and removed. We talked about the ascension for the last 20, 30 years. This may be part of the process. If you look at it from a higher perspective, as souls and what we're doing with coming in and out of incarnation. I interviewed a Seth man, somebody who studied with Jane Roberts, Seth, and Jane Roberts says that, when we die, it's always intentional. There's no victims. It doesn't matter how it is. On a soul level, we agree to go in and out of our incarnation. So as we look at this and the potential, we have a mass exodus of souls. And I was talking to my sister, and she said, she lives in Pennsylvania. She goes, yeah, but before the virus hit, these kids were killing themselves with heroin. She said in Pennsylvania, on her nightly news, they give the count of how many young people died of heroin overdoses. And she said it's about 5 to 10 people every single night. Sometimes it's more. She said, we're losing all the youth of Pennsylvania. So on some level, the children coming in now, these young people are putting out a cry of desperation that this planet needs to change. It's not working for souls coming in. And that's what happened with the Greys. The Greys started to not be fertile anymore and have children being born because their paradigm, their matrix wasn't working. And so souls on a level don't have to come into a place to be experience in a lifetime. That's all by agreement until they just stop coming in. And that's what happened with the Anunnaki. They stopped being fertile. So we're looking at the, humanity, our fertility is going down. Mm-hmm. Now we have COVID-19, so these people are dying. And now it's not just the elderly or pre-existing. We have it's mutating so fast. There's no way that they're going to be able to create a virus because as soon as they create one, it's going to mutate. So this seems to be artificial intelligence, but, it may not be artificial intelligence that came from some laboratory that, some human beings created. It seems almost like it's extraterrestrial higher intelligence because it's really to just survive and mutate is so rapid. I don't know what's going to happen. It's just we are living in interesting times. But our system became so perverse. Let me just finish this thing and then I'll pass it back to you. Our system became so perverse. So when a system becomes so perverse, an outside perturbation comes in to create absolute chaos and a meltdown, and then it reorganizes. The system reorganizes at a higher level. So that's what we're in. We are in absolute, total chaos. And none of us know if we're going to be alive. We wake up a day, we don't know if this might be the last day of our life. It's really high drama. I mean, you look at all the movies and television shows. This is the highest high drama you could ever fabricate. And when I wake up, they say, oh, that's not a dream. That's what's going on. We're in the middle of a science fiction movie. Whoa.
Well, we joke every day. This is from last year, and then last year till now, we're in a cross between a Stephen King movie being directed by Quentin Tarantino.
Oh, yes, that's a great analogy. Whoa.
I mean, we joke about it, but at the same time, when you're sitting back watching everything that's going on, I mean, it's insane. So what does the government do? They close everything down, basically, tells everyone to stay home so they can get a handle on this, and then we have protests because no one wants to stay at home.
And that's absolutely insane. I mean, it's absolutely insane. I have past life recollections of previous pandemics. It was called the plague, right? Mm-hmm. And when the plague hit your little village, you stayed inside. And then in 1918 to 1920 with the Spanish flu, everybody wore masks. When you would get off the train or go on the train, they mm-hmm. were passing out masks 100 years ago. Right. So why aren't we doing that now? I mean, they lost millions of people. I think 50 million people got infected, and there were about 3 billion people alive back then. And I forget what the stats are. I pulled it up periodically. It's like, oh, if you take that to this culture where we have like twice the population, mm-hmm. We're going to have millions of people, maybe a billion or 2 or 3 billion die by the time this thing runs its course.
Right. Here's the thing. Ahead. Okay, going back to 1918 with the Spanish flu, they closed everything down. They started flattening the curve, as we call it today, and then they open everything up. What happened right within a couple weeks of opening everything up, that's when it hit the worst. Why? Because you had infected people back in the population that wasn't exhibiting signs. They didn't know they were sick, and they're back in the population. Well, isn't that what we're doing right now?
I think that this is intentional genocide of a certain population, and one of my reasons for this is about 23, when I first moved here to Maui in 1997, I came to a healing retreat center. My husband and his ex-wife had been running a retreat center. Then they got divorced, and then I met my husband and moved in. And this guy came and said that he had been working on a secret program, and he said that when we went to grade school or started kindergarten, we got our inoculation, right, our vaccine, and that put the genetic markers in us, right? So that was element 1. And because he said, well, look at what's going on. And they were just starting to do chemtrails because that's element 2. That's a delivery system. So when the evil Illuminati, or whoever you want to call them, want to call the population, they just unleash through the atmosphere. That's a delivery system, an activator for the DNA that's within you. So say they want to take out brown, black, or Asian, or red people, or whatever they want to take out. That activates and they start getting viruses and flus, and they're not. So anyway, this seems to be genocide. And I talked to George Green, and we're coming up on the anniversary of his death. I forget the exact day. It was somewhere around this date. George Green, I think it was in June. We did his final interview, and he has a website called nohoax.com. And he had been in the meetings with the big brothers, the Kennedys, and everybody in the late 60s, early 70s about how to set up this new monetary system in the United States. So he created derivatives, which is what happened with the 2008 crash. That was like an intentional crash to send us into chaos. So before he died, he caught cancer, and he said, oh, I'm not doing anything. I'm out of here. I want to be out of here before this, excuse my French, shit hits the fan. He said, I know what's coming down. Back in those meetings, they told me, like, who was going to be the next president, and they said, we want you to work for the next president. And he said, how do you know who's the next president? Aren't we going to have an election? I said, well, the guy's name is Jimmy Carter. And he said, well, was he a Democrat or Republican? Oh, he's a Democrat. He says, I'm a Republican. I'm never going to vote for a Democrat. It doesn't matter. We already selected. We go back and forth between the Democratic and Republican. It's just a big dance we do for humanity. And, so anyway, he ended up getting out of the game because they were trying to have sex with his 15-year-old daughter. He said, I'm out of here. So he left. And then he tried to make amends because he had created derivatives, which was really horrendous because, millions and millions of people lost their homes, and they spent their, right. So he said, I'm trying to make amends. I wrote a series of books. I'm giving them away free. I'm doing what I can. But at that point, I had known him about 3 or 4 years, he and his wife, and he said, I'm out of here. And I know it's coming. So this we've known about in the conspiracy level, and we've known about it. There were all these trial runs of what we would do with the pandemic. In the change of administration, there was already these mock trials of what will happen if we have a pandemic and what we're supposed to do in the protocol. Now, this is, if you just look at this logically, this is intentional. This is calling upon. I don't know what we can do about it, but this is genocide. And back to you. It's kind of, but, I'm trying to figure out what I can do, and I think talking about it, thank God we can still talk about it, right? We still have communication. They haven't shut down our internet. They haven't shut down our phone. We can still talk about it. Maybe somebody out there, and feel free to write to me. I'm aquarianradio@gmail. I spend every day trying to figure out what is the solution for this chaos, total chaos that we're in. Do you have any ideas?
I have no ideas right now. I'm actually writing well, it started off as a journal. The girls and I that are writing the journal from January through, I think, part of March, we're going to end it making a little bit of fictional journal only because there's some things that are private thoughts that we don't want out there, because who wants to read all of our private thoughts? But at the same time, there's things in there that we're picking up from the media that now they're trying to bury. So
right.
We're trying to write it in a way that 10, 20 years from now, there's a conscious accountability for what's going on right now.
And that's a wonderful thing to do. And I actually started upping my blogging, and I'm going into I was trained as a systems analyst, and so I'm going into my systems analyst, self, wearing that hat and looking at this overall system, because I know there's a way we can resolve this, right? And so it's wonderful what you're doing, because you're documenting this for future generations.
Right. That's going to be important in 20 years.
Most
not so much
definitely,
right
yes.
now, but like I said, it's not going to be a bestseller today, because who wants to read about the pandemic that we're all in? But in 20 years, our grandkids might be interested in it.
Right, and especially, wouldn't it be great to have this from 100 years ago? What they went through in that pandemic, if you found somebody's nurses or doctors' journal from 100 years ago, wouldn't that be powerful? Maybe they have some insights of what we could do about this, or at least, the human story is powerful. I love watching the stories even of, hundreds of years ago, because they're all relative to here and now. Everybody's human experience is relative to each other's.
Exactly. History repeats itself. So if we keep a journal, we keep a log now, keep all the doctors' information, is what they're seeing, what they're not seeing, what works, what doesn't work, then when this comes back, or something similar comes back, because it's going to happen, it's just history, then they have an outline what they can do that might work.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about saving lives, right?
It's all about saving lives, and really, every life is equal. It doesn't matter what avatar you're in. You're here to have an experience, and this is it's a murder. We're being murdered. We're being killed. And so our potential is to live hundreds of thousands of years. So my research with my husband and I are students of Zechariah Sitchin, and we've studied all the Anunnaki stuff, and they lived to be, they were hundreds of thousands of years. That's our human potential, because we are related to them genetically. They created humanity. If you piece together the Anunnaki story, the Sumerian, the Bible origins, Christianity came from it, and so did we have this documented history. Those people, thousands of years ago, they had enough foresight to write it down, and here we're interpreting it. Our potential, our lifespan potential, is in the hundreds of thousands of years, at least the tens of thousands. So we have, stories of our ancestors that lived like Noah. Noah lived to be 1,000 years or something like that. And there were other people, Methuselah, all these people that live a long life. We got genetically altered and dummied down. And there's a whole backstory on that. Won't go into it, but our potential. When my friend Dr. Albert DeGray came and did a couple workshops here in Maui, I sponsored him. He was saying that he was working with the Human Genome Project, and they were decoding our DNA. And he said, we have the potential to live right now about 1,000 years. And within the next 1,000 years, we will definitely reach what he called escape velocity. And we can have this extreme longevity, which will be basically physical immortality. And I tried to tie in the Anunnaki with him, and he said, oh, no, I'm doing conventional. I don't want to hear any stuff like that, because I get sponsors, and I just got to keep it mainstream and straight science. He said, okay, I won't pollute your mind with it. But I was just so excited because it correlated with the ancient astronaut aliens information. It's like, oh, my goodness. So I'm a systems analyst. I piece these things together. And it's very exciting when you get that, because if we can get to the point where the technologies are released, I think my theory, I'm going to put my theories out there. I might be telling you,
Go ahead.
But I think that Trump has some kind of vaccine because he's walking around with no mask on. Now, Boris Johnson was the same type of politician, and he got the virus, right? So he basically, when he came out, he said, "I thank you, nurses and doctors, you saved my life. I would be dead." And he acknowledged that. But what is it that Trump and everybody are just, they were standing next to each other, and we were in full pandemic, right? And now they're still not wearing, and he says, "I get tested." Oh, I go, yeah, but you're getting exposed. You know, every day you walk around somewhere, and if even one person has it and you get within, you know, apparently it stays in the air, so you don't even have to have somebody breathe on you or cough on you, or it stays in the air for so long. So he's exposing himself, and yeah, he gets tested once a week, but he's still going to be exposed. So there's some secret there that we're not getting about why he doesn't get it. And so people are starting to Twitter and text it and go, why doesn't Trump get sick? What the hell is going on that he doesn't get sick, right? So anyway, what do you think about that? It's like, that's a mystery.
It's an interesting take, but we're almost out of time, and I want to give our listeners ways to contact you. You do have a website. Do you want to go ahead and give that to them?
Yes, I have a couple. I have aquarianradio.com, AQUARIAN radio.com. I have enkispeaks.com, which my husband and I share, ENKISPEAKS.com. And I'm also working on JanetKiraLessin.com, which is JanetKiraLessin.com. And you can contact me at aquarianradio@gmail.com. I do private sessions. I do radio. I'm not doing conferences right now, of course, but I do webinars. And I'm here to connect the dots and find planetary solutions to maximize survival for everybody and to pull us into a new paradigm of higher consciousness. Because right now we're at a level 0 civilization, and that's not good. We need to up-level in the Kardashev scale to at least a level 1 civilization, which meets all the needs of its planetary citizens, and we will be a spacefaring race with higher technologies, because there's always solutions for all this stuff, but we have to go outside of our little matrix box, which has us all dying before we're 100 years old, to the higher level of existence and consciousness. So I'd love to synergize and co-create a network, so please contact me, aquarianradio@gmail.com.
Awesome. And thank you so much for being on the show. It's very enlightening.
Thank you for inviting me, and anytime I'll come back. And if you want to come on my show, let me know.
Okay, awesome. Thank you so much.
Okay, much love and blessings. Thank you. Aloha.
Aloha.